Have you ever found yourself lying awake at 3 in the morning, replaying a heated argument with your partner over and over in your mind? Or maybe you've experienced that hollow, gut-wrenching feeling after a breakup, where every memory feels like a fresh wound and the future seems impossibly bleak. If you've ever felt tossed around by these powerful emotional storms in your romantic life, you're not alone. Love, in all its beauty, often brings with it a tide of intense feelings: jealousy, fear, heartache, anxiety, that can leave even the strongest of us feeling powerless and adrift. It's in these moments of raw vulnerability that we start searching for answers, for a way to regain our footing and find a sense of peace and control amidst the chaos. What if I told you that an ancient philosophy practiced by Roman emperors and enlightened thinkers holds the key to not just weathering these emotional hurricanes, but actually mastering them? This isn't about building emotional walls or becoming cold and detached. True emotional mastery in romance isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about understanding it, channeling it, and using the power of your own reason to respond to love's challenges with clarity, strength, and profound wisdom. Stoicism, often misunderstood as a philosophy of emotionless endurance, is actually a profound guide to living a vibrant, engaged, and resilient life. At its heart, Stoicism teaches us that our suffering doesn't come from the events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. When your partner says something that triggers anger, or when a relationship ends, it's your perception of that event, the story you tell yourself about it, that fuels the emotional fire. Stoicism provides the mental tools to step back, to examine those judgments with calm reason, and to choose a response that aligns with your deepest values, rather than being hijacked by raw, unchecked emotion. This is the path to emotional mastery, a journey from being reactive to being responsive, from confusion to clarity, and from heartache to a more stable, fulfilling kind of love. It's about building an inner fortress of character that allows you to experience the full depth of romantic connection without being destroyed by its inevitable trials. In this video, we are going to walk that path together through 25 practical, actionable steps grounded in Stoic wisdom. We'll explore how to differentiate between what is within your control and what is not, a fundamental Stoic principle that can liberate you from endless anxiety. We'll learn how to reframe obstacles as opportunities for growth, how to practice gratitude even in moments of frustration, and how to cultivate a love that is generous and forgiving rather than possessive and fearful. This isn't a quick fix or a set of simplistic rules. It's a transformative roadmap for building unshakable emotional resilience. By the end of our journey, you will have a clear understanding of how to apply these timeless principles to your own romantic relationships, leading you toward a deeper sense of fulfillment, a calmer mind, and a heart that is both strong and open. So, if you're ready to transform your emotional landscape and discover a more peaceful, powerful way to love, let's take that first step forward. That initial step toward emotional mastery, the one that forms the very bedrock of Stoic practice, is learning to distinguish with razor-sharp clarity between what is within your power and what is not. This principle, known as the Dichotomy of Control, is like learning the rules of the road before you ever get behind the wheel of a car. It's the fundamental framework that makes every journey, including the journey of love, not only possible but peaceful. Think of yourself as the captain of a ship. You have absolute command over your vessel. You can meticulously maintain it, steer it with skill and intention, and plot a thoughtful course toward your destination. This vessel is your own mind, your judgments, your values, your actions, and your responses to whatever happens, but you have absolutely no control over the sea itself. You cannot command the winds to cease howling or the waves to stop crashing against your hull. The sea represents everything external to your will: your partner's feelings, their past, their words, their actions, and the vast, unpredictable ocean of external events that will inevitably arise. Now, let's bring this from the high seas into the heart of your romantic life. You cannot control whether the person you're dating feels the same intense connection you do. You can't force a partner to be more communicative if they are naturally reserved, nor can you prevent a relationship from ending if the other person decides to leave. These are the storms and the calm waters of the sea. They are externals, and when we exhaust our energy trying to command them, we are like a captain shaking their fist at a hurricane, accomplishing nothing except our own frustration and despair. The profound shift happens when you redirect all that effort back to your ship. You can control how you interpret your partner's quiet mood. Do you assume it's a personal rejection, or do you respond with curiosity and compassion? You can control your actions. Do you communicate your needs clearly and kindly, or do you resort to passive-aggressive comments? You can control your response to a breakup. Do you descend into a spiral of self-pity and blame, or do you focus on the lessons learned and the dignity you can maintain throughout the process? This isn't a philosophy of passivity, it's a philosophy of empowered focus. By ceasing to fight battles you can never win, the battle to control another person's heart or mind, you free up an immense reservoir of energy to master the one thing you truly can, yourself. The anxiety that gnaws at you when you're waiting for a text back loses its power when you realize that the sending of the text was your action within your control, but the reply belongs to the sea. The jealousy that flares up becomes a signal to turn inward, to examine your own judgments about security and self-worth, rather than an excuse to launch an inquisition on your partner. Every emotional trigger in romance becomes an invitation to ask a single, transformative question: is this within my control? If it is, take purposeful, virtuous action. If it is not, practice the quiet strength of acceptance. This is the first and most critical step. It's the compass that will guide you through all the steps that follow, ensuring you invest your energy where it truly matters, building an inner stability that no external storm can ever shatter. Now that we've established the vital distinction between what we can and cannot control, we arrive at a step that might initially sound counterintuitive, even alarming: the deliberate practice of negative visualization, or as the Stoics called it, Premeditatio Malorum. This is the conscious act of imagining the things we fear: losing the health of our relationships, the presence of our partner, the comfort of our romantic stability. If the first step was about learning to steer our ship, this step is about mentally preparing for storms, not because we expect them, but because we know the sea is unpredictable. At first glance, this seems like a recipe for anxiety. Why would you willingly think about your relationship ending or a painful disagreement? The Stoic purpose, however, is the exact opposite. This practice isn't about breeding a dark pessimism. It's about vaccinating the mind against the shock of adversity, and in the process, profoundly deepening our appreciation for what we have right now. Think of it as emotional fire drills. We conduct fire drills in buildings not because we believe a fire is imminent, but so that if the alarm ever sounds, we don't freeze in panic. We know the exits, we move with purpose. Negative visualization is a fire drill for the heart. By mentally walking through potential difficulties, we strip them of their power to ambush us emotionally. The anxiety that comes from the unknown, from the what if, is often far more crippling than the actual event itself. When you've already sat with the idea of a difficult conversation, a temporary separation, or even a parting of ways, you disarm the element of surprise. You've already felt the echoes of that emotion in the safe space of your mind, and you've rehearsed your response, the response of a rational, virtuous person who remains anchored in their principles, no matter how rough the waters get. This rehearsal builds a profound emotional resilience, ensuring that you are guided by your values, not hijacked by your fears. Let's make this practice tangible with a specific, guided example you can apply today. Take a quiet moment, close your eyes, and bring to mind a current, low-grade tension in your relationship, perhaps a recurring topic you and your partner don't quite see eye to eye on. Now, instead of pushing the discomfort away, lean into it. Visualize initiating a conversation about this topic. See yourself speaking calmly and clearly. Now, imagine the response you might fear most. Perhaps your partner becomes defensive or dismissive, or the discussion spirals into a familiar, unproductive argument. Don't just watch this scene passively, feel it. Notice the heat rising in your chest, the impulse to retaliate with a sharp word, the flush of frustration. This is the crucial moment of the exercise. Now, pause the scene in your mind. This is where you insert your Stoic response. Remind yourself, you cannot control their reaction, only your own. Take a mental breath. See yourself choosing not to escalate. You might say, I can see this is upsetting, and that's not my intention. Let's take a breather and come back to it. You maintain your composure. You act with respect both for them and for yourself. By walking through this mental scenario, you've accomplished several powerful things. You've confronted a fear directly, reducing its shadowy power over you. You've rehearsed a virtuous, calm response, making it far more likely you'll choose that path if the situation arises in reality. And most beautifully, when you open your eyes and return to the present moment, you'll likely feel a wave of gratitude. Gratitude that this argument isn't actually happening right now. Gratitude for the current peace, for the partner who is still there, flaws and all. This practice transforms your everyday perception. That minor habit of your partner's that usually irritates you suddenly seems insignificant when you've just mentally faced a world without them in it. The sound of their voice becomes a gift, not a given. Negative visualization, practiced regularly, doesn't push you away from your relationship. It pulls you more deeply into a conscious, grateful, and incredibly resilient appreciation for the fragile, precious connection you have today. Building on the practice of preparing our minds for adversity, we now turn to a skill that acts as a real-time guardian of our peace, learning to differentiate between our initial impressions and the assumptions we so often build upon them. Think of your mind as receiving a constant stream of data from the world. An impression is that raw, unfiltered, and instantaneous piece of data, a flash of heat in your chest when you see your partner laugh a little too long at a text from someone else, or a sudden sinking feeling when they cancel plans at the last minute. This impression is automatic, visceral, and it carries a powerful, persuasive charge. It feels like an undeniable truth, but here is the critical Stoic insight: that impression is not the truth. It is merely a signal, a first draft of reality written by your subconscious. The problem, the source of nearly all our unnecessary emotional suffering in relationships, is that we skip the crucial next step. We don't treat the impression as a piece of data to be examined. We treat it as a completed story. We instantly convert that flash of heat into a full-blown assumption. He must be flirting with someone else, or she doesn't value our time together anymore. We take the raw sensory input and we author a narrative around it, a narrative that is almost always skewed by our own insecurities, past wounds, and fears. This leap from impression to assumption is the birthplace of jealousy, resentment, and countless arguments. The Stoic practice is to insert a deliberate, conscious pause right in that space between the feeling and the story. It is in this sacred pause that your power resides. When that initial jealous impression strikes, instead of letting it escalate into an accusation or a spiral of silent anxiety, you learn to calmly say to yourself, I am having the impression of jealousy. Just naming it, objectifying it, robs it of some of its controlling power. You are no longer the jealousy itself, you are the observer of the jealousy. This creates the necessary distance to then ask the most important question you can ask in that moment. What is the actual evidence for the story I am starting to tell myself? Is your partner laughing at a text-definitive proof of infidelity? Of course not. It is one single, isolated data point that could be explained by 100 different, more benign stories. A funny meme from a friend, an amusing story from a coworker, a silly video from a family member. The assumption you build is a choice, and it is a choice that, until now, you may have been making on autopilot, handing over your emotional state to a completely unverified hypothesis. Let's walk through a common dating scenario to see this practice in action. Imagine you've been seeing someone for a few months and you have plans to meet for dinner. You arrive at the restaurant, find a table, and text them to let them know you're there. 10 minutes pass, then 20. They're not responding to your texts. The initial impression is one of concern, maybe a prick of worry, but quickly, without that stoic pause, the mind gets to work. It layers assumption upon assumption. They're standing me up. I knew this was too good to be true. They must have met someone else. They don't respect me or my time. With every passing minute, this story solidifies. By the time they finally rush in, 25 minutes late, flustered and apologetic, you are no longer the person who was looking forward to a nice dinner. You are a ball of quiet resentment or poised for a confrontation. Your evening, and potentially the relationship, is now poisoned by a narrative that you authored entirely in your own mind. Now let's replay that same scenario with the Stoic tool of differentiation engaged. The impression arrives, the worry when they're late. You feel it, you acknowledge it. Then you consciously insert the pause. You say to yourself, the data is that they are not here at the agreed time and are not currently responding to texts. Full stop. You refuse to write the next chapter. Instead, you explore the possible, reasonable explanations. Their phone battery may have died. They could be stuck in unexpected traffic. There might have been a last-minute emergency at work. You hold these possibilities with the same weight as the catastrophic one. This isn't about naive optimism. It's about intellectual honesty. It's about waiting for more data before drawing a conclusion. So you sit. You might feel the anxiety, but you don't feed it with a horror story. You simply observe the restaurant, you breathe, you remain in the present moment with the known facts, not the terrifying fiction. When your partner finally arrives, breathless, explaining that a major project deadline was moved up and their phone died in the middle of it all, your response will be entirely different. You can express your genuine concern, you can welcome them, and you can move forward with the evening connected and intact. You prevented a false narrative from sabotaging a real connection. This is the immense practical power of separating the raw impression from the manufactured assumption. It allows you to respond to reality as it is, not to the frightening phantom your mind can so easily create. Having practiced pausing before we let our assumptions run wild, we build the mental space to approach something even more profound. The radical acceptance of our romantic journey exactly as it unfolds. This brings us to the heart of the fourth step, the powerful Stoic principle of amor fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. This is not about passive resignation or putting a naive, happy face on a painful experience. It's an active, courageous stance of embracing everything that happens in your love life, not in spite of the hardships, but because of them. It's about looking at a painful breakup, a frustrating incompatibility, or a stinging rejection and saying, "This too is for my benefit." This is the raw material I have been given to build a stronger, wiser, and more complete version of myself. Think of a master blacksmith working with a piece of iron. The iron alone is relatively soft and malleable, not yet fit for a purpose that requires strength and resilience. To transform it, the blacksmith must subject it to the intense heat of the forge and then the brutal, repeated strikes of the hammer against the anvil. From the perspective of the iron, this process is pure violence and chaos. But the blacksmith knows this apparent destruction is the only path to creating a sharp, durable blade. Amor fati is the practice of learning to be both the iron and the blacksmith. It is trusting that the fires of heartache and the hammer blows of rejection are not meaningless punishments, but essential forces that are forging your character, tempering your emotional strength, and sharpening your understanding of what true love requires. How do we begin to apply this when the pain feels anything but beneficial? Let's take the universal experience of rejection. the standard, automatic response is to see it as a verdict on our worth. We internalize the pain, weaving a story of personal failure. I wasn't attractive enough, interesting enough, good enough. This narrative turns a single event into a soul-crushing tragedy. Amor Fati invites a complete reframe. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you learn to ask, "What does this make possible for me?" Perhaps that rejection saved you from a relationship that would have ultimately led to far greater pain down the road. Maybe it is forcing you to confront a dependency on external validation, showing you that your self-worth must be built on something more solid than another person's approval. It creates a necessary void, an empty space that now has the potential to be filled with new opportunities, new self-knowledge, and a new person who is a much better fit, none of which would have been possible had that previous connection continued. This same principle applies with immense power within an ongoing relationship during times of conflict or disappointment. Imagine you and your partner have a major disagreement about life priorities, a clash of visions for the future that feels fundamentally irreconcilable. The easy default path is to see this as a catastrophic flaw in the relationship, a sign that you're simply not meant to be together. You can feel the walls going up, the resentment building. But with the mindset of Amor Fati, you can choose to see this difficult friction not as a threat, but as an essential piece of sand in the oyster. An oyster doesn't enjoy the irritation of a grain of sand, but it is that very irritation, that persistent discomfort, that forces it to secrete the nacre that eventually forms a beautiful pearl. Your relationship's grain of sand, that point of friction, is an invitation to develop deeper communication, greater patience, and more creative problem solving. It is sculpting you both into more understanding, more adaptable, and more committed partners. The hardship isn't an obstacle to your love. It is the very process through which a more mature, resilient, and truly valuable love is formed. By actively loving your fate, you perform a kind of psychological alchemy on your romantic life. You transform the lead of painful experiences into the gold of wisdom. A past heartbreak is no longer a ghost that haunts you, but a teacher that educated you about your own boundaries and needs. A current argument is no longer a battle to be won, but a collaborative workshop where you and your partner are forging a stronger bond. This mindset liberates you from being a victim of circumstance and empowers you as the co-author of your story. Every event, especially the difficult ones, becomes a necessary stitch in the tapestry of your life, contributing to a pattern that is uniquely and perfectly yours. When you can look at the entire journey of your heart, the joy and the sorrow, the connections and the goodbyes, and feel a sense of gratitude for all of it, you have truly mastered the profound art of loving your fate. This inner resilience we build by loving our fate naturally prepares us for the next essential step, which is the conscious cultivation of courage. Now, when we hear the word courage in a romantic context, our minds might leap to grand, cinematic gestures declaring our love from a mountaintop or dramatically winning someone back. But Stoic courage is something far more subtle, more disciplined, and in many ways far more powerful. For the Stoic, courage isn't about the absence of fear, it's about acting rightly in the very presence of fear. It is the ability to willingly endure emotional discomfort, anxiety, and vulnerability for the sake of a higher good, for the integrity of the relationship, for your own self-respect, or for the simple, unflinching truth. This is the courage that doesn't roar, but speaks calmly even when its voice wants to shake. Think of the Roman Stoic Seneca, who wrote extensively about facing adversity with a steady mind. He wasn't talking about charging into battle, but about the daily battles of character. The battle to speak honestly when deceit would be easier, or to accept a painful truth when denial would be more comfortable. Or consider the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who guided the entire Roman Empire through plague and war, all while reminding himself in his private journals to act with justice and to accept peacefully the actions of others. Their courage was an inner fortress, a commitment to virtue regardless of the external chaos. In our modern dating lives, this translates directly into the bravery required to have that difficult but necessary conversation you've been avoiding. It's the courage to set a firm boundary with someone you're deeply attracted to, even when you're terrified it might make them leave. It's the ultimate courage to walk away from a situation that feels familiar but is fundamentally toxic, stepping into the unknown rather than remaining in a known misery. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you're in a relationship where your partner has a habit of making sarcastic, belittling comments in front of your friends. Each time it happens, you feel a hot flush of humiliation, but you laugh it off to keep the peace, quietly storing the hurt inside. The easy, familiar path is to continue swallowing this resentment. The Stoic path of courage requires you to lean directly into the emotional discomfort you've been avoiding. It means choosing a private, calm moment and saying, "When you make those kinds of jokes in front of our friends, it makes me feel disrespected. It's important to me that we can both feel respected in our relationship." Every fiber of your being might be screaming not to do this. Fear whispers that you'll sound too sensitive, that you'll start a fight, that you might even lose the relationship. Courage is not the absence of that fear. It is the determination to speak your truth in spite of it. You are enduring the short-term anxiety of the conversation for the long-term good of mutual respect and your own self-worth. This virtuous courage also shines brightly at the very beginning and the very end of relationships. In modern dating, it takes immense courage to be vulnerable and express your genuine interest to someone, fully aware that you might be met with rejection. The cowardly path is to play games, to feign indifference, to hide your true feelings in a self-protective shell. The courageous path, the Stoic path, is to be authentically yourself and to make your interest clear, understanding that their response is outside your control, but your honesty and vulnerability are entirely within it. And perhaps the most profound act of Stoic courage is the strength to end a relationship that you know is not right, even when there is no dramatic betrayal, just a slow, quiet erosion of your happiness. Staying because you're afraid of being alone or because you've already invested so much time is a form of cowardice. Leaving, despite the certainty of causing pain and facing the unknown, is an act of courage undertaken for the sake of both people's long-term well-being. It is enduring the immediate, sharp pain of goodbye to prevent a lifetime of quiet resignation. This is the brave heart of Stoicism in action, not a heart of stone, but a heart so strong it can do what is right even when it is trembling. This relentless focus on building our internal courage naturally invites a shift in perspective, a step that might feel almost cosmic in its scope but delivers incredibly practical peace. We now arrive at the sixth step, a powerful Stoic technique known as the view from above. This is a mental exercise, a form of guided meditation, where you consciously pull back the camera of your mind from the intense close-up of your current emotional drama to see it from a vast, panoramic vantage point. When you're in the throes of a painful argument or the raw anguish of a breakup, your entire world seems to contract around that single, agonizing point. It feels all-consuming, as if nothing else exists or matters. The view from above is the antidote to this emotional claustrophobia. It asks you to zoom out, not to minimize your pain, but to contextualize it, to see it as one small, passing moment in the grand, sweeping narrative of your entire life, and even within the immense tapestry of human history. Let's try this together right now. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes if you'd like, and bring to mind a specific romantic challenge you're currently facing. It could be a recent disagreement, a feeling of insecurity, or the sting of a rejection. First, just see the situation as it feels in this moment, the emotions, the tension, the weight of it. Now begin to pull the camera back. See yourself in the room, in the city, going about your day. Now pull back further. See your city as a map, then your country, then the entire planet Earth, a beautiful blue marble spinning in the void. See the thin atmosphere, the vast oceans, the continents. Now consider the billions of other people on this planet at this very moment. Each one of them is the star of their own drama, experiencing their own joys, their own heartbreaks, their own worries and triumphs. Your personal struggle is one among billions unfolding simultaneously. Your heartache is a real and valid experience, but it is not the only experience happening in the universe right now. Continue to zoom out in your mind's eye. See the Earth from space, then see our solar system, the Sun, the planets in their timeless orbits. Reflect on the sheer scale of deep time. Think of the countless generations of humans who have lived before you. Every single one of them, from emperors to peasants, experienced love and loss. They felt the same pangs of jealousy, the same euphoria of connection, the same devastating grief of separation that you feel. Their dramas, which felt so all-consuming to them, have now passed into history, into silence. And one day, not so long from now in the cosmic calendar, our own lives, our own heartaches and joys will also be part of that same silent past. This is not a morbid thought, it is a profoundly liberating one. The problem that feels so monumental, so utterly world-ending today, is in fact a tiny, fleeting speck in the grand scheme of things. This realization doesn't erase your pain, but it does drain the panic from it. It removes the false sense of ultimacy, the feeling that this is the final, catastrophic verdict on your life. When you return from this mental journey and open your eyes to your current situation, something subtle but significant has shifted. The argument with your partner hasn't disappeared, but its emotional charge has likely diminished. It's been placed in a much larger container. You can see it now for what it truly is, a temporary friction, a misunderstanding between two fragile, imperfect human beings on a small planet, rather than a universe-shattering catastrophe. This perspective grants you what we might call cosmic clarity. The small, petty urges to retaliate, to obsess, to cling desperately start to feel small. They feel incongruent with the vast, dignified universe you just mentally visited. You are able to approach the problem with a calmer mind and a more generous heart because you understand that both you and your partner are navigating the same brief, beautiful, and challenging human experience. The view from above is the ultimate tool for gaining composure, for remembering that no single storm, no matter how fierce, can last forever in the life of a soul that has learned to see itself as part of the eternal sky. After expanding our perspective to the cosmic scale, we bring our focus back to the very core of our motivations, to the engine of our suffering and our joy, our own desires. This leads us to the seventh step, a profound Stoic practice known as the discipline of desire. At its heart, this discipline is about retraining our wants and wishes to align with what is truly good for us, not according to our fleeting emotions, but according to nature and virtue. The average person's desires in romance are usually aimed at external, uncertain outcomes. I want this specific person to love me. I want a relationship that looks like that couple's on social media. I want to avoid ever feeling the pain of heartbreak again. The problem is stark and simple. None of these things are entirely within our control. You cannot force a specific person to love you. You cannot manufacture a picture-perfect relationship. You cannot inoculate yourself against loss. When we chain our happiness to these fragile, external targets, we are building our emotional home on a foundation of sand, and every incoming tide of reality threatens to wash it away. The Stoic revolution is to shift the entire object of your desire inward. The ultimate goal is no longer to obtain a specific person or relationship, but to cultivate a good character and to act virtuously within whatever relationship you find yourself. Your primary desire becomes, I want to be a person of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. I want to love generously, communicate honestly, and act with integrity, regardless of how the other person responds. This may sound like a subtle shift, but its practical effects are seismic. Imagine you're deeply interested in someone. The old, attachment-based desire would be, I must make them my partner. Your entire emotional state would then rise and fall with their every text, every interaction, every hint of their interest level. you are at the mercy of their whims. Now apply the discipline of desire. Your restated goal becomes, my desire is to interact with this person with authenticity, kindness, and respect. I will express my interest clearly and honorably, and I will accept their response with grace. Do you see the profound difference? In the first scenario, if they don't reciprocate, your entire mission has failed and you are devastated. In the second, you have succeeded the moment you acted with virtue. Your desire was for a good character, and you fulfilled it through your own actions. The outcome, while hopefully positive, is secondary to your own moral success. This realignment liberates you from the exhausting treadmill of attachment and the inevitable crash of disappointment. When your deepest yearning is for your own virtue, you can never truly be robbed of your success. A breakup under this new framework is not a failure of your romantic goal, but a new context in which to practice your virtues. The virtue of resilience, the virtue of forgiveness, the virtue of wishing the other person well without bitterness. This doesn't mean you become cold or unfeeling. You will still feel the sadness of loss, but it won't be compounded by the toxic narrative of personal failure or the desperate clinging to what is gone. Your grief is clean, a natural human response, not a tangled knot of shattered attachment. You desired to be a good partner while you were together, and you did so. The relationship's end does not erase that accomplishment. This is how you build an inner citadel of contentment that no external event can breach. Let's ground this in a practical dating scenario. Suppose you go on a few wonderful dates with someone, and you feel that spark. The old, untrained desire would immediately start crafting a future, imagining vacations together, meeting the family, a shared life. You become invested in this specific storybook outcome. When the person then texts you to say they didn't feel a romantic connection, the collapse of that entire imagined future feels like a personal catastrophe. Now apply the disciplined desire. From the very first date, your focus is not on scripting a future, but on being fully present. Your desire is to be engaging, curious, and genuinely yourself. You want to discover if there is a true compatibility of character and values, not just a surface-level attraction. When the thanks but no thanks message arrives, your primary reflection is not, I lost them, but did I act in accordance with my values? If the answer is yes, you can genuinely feel a sense of peace. You succeeded in your goal. The outcome was not right, and you accept that with the quiet strength that comes from knowing your own worth is not determined by another's opinion. You are free to move forward without the baggage of resentment or self-doubt. Your desire still firmly fixed on the one thing that can never be taken from you, the quality of your own character. Building on the powerful practice of disciplining our desires toward inner virtue, we now turn our focus outward to the tangible expression of that virtue through our everyday behavior. This brings us to the eighth step, the discipline of action, which challenges us to perform our duties within a relationship with kindness, fairness, and unwavering integrity, not as a transaction seeking a specific return, but as an end in itself. If the discipline of desire is about aligning our wants with what is good, the discipline of action is about aligning our deeds with that same good. It's the conscious decision to be a good partner because that is who you choose to be, not because your partner is being good to you in that moment. Your fulfillment is found in the very act of giving love itself, in the integrity of your own conduct, making you the stable, generous source of goodwill in your relationship, rather than a reactive participant in a constant scorekeeping game. Think of a lighthouse. Its purpose is to cast a steady, reliable beam of light across the water, guiding ships safely to shore. It does not dim its light for ships that are off course, nor does it shine brighter only for the ships that signal their appreciation. It simply performs its duty consistently and unconditionally because that is its essential nature. The discipline of action invites you to become a lighthouse in your relationships. Your kindness, your fairness, your honesty, these are the beams of light you cast. You offer them not because your partner has earned them through perfect behavior, but because possessing and expressing these qualities is central to your own character. When you act from this place, you decouple your actions from the unpredictable waves of your partner's mood or the fleeting state of the relationship. You find a profound and unshakable satisfaction in knowing that you are showing up as your best self, regardless of the external weather. This philosophy is powerfully embodied in the words of the Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius, who reminded himself, "You can commit injustice by doing nothing." In the context of romance, this is a radical idea. Injustice isn't just about active cruelty, it can also be the injustice of omission. The kindness you withheld because you were feeling slighted, the supportive word you didn't offer because you were too focused on your own grievances, the fairness you abandoned because you decided they deserved less. The discipline of action calls you to a higher standard. It asks you to act for the common good of the relationship, which is a shared project between two people, even when you don't feel an immediate emotional reward. This might look like doing a household chore without being asked, not because your partner will praise you for it, but because a clean, peaceful home benefits you both. It means speaking to them with respect during a disagreement, not because they are being respectful to you, but because you are committed to the principle of respectful communication. It's offering a sincere compliment or a small, unexpected gesture of affection simply to bring them joy, with no mental tally of how many times they've done the same for you lately. To see this in practice, consider a common point of friction: feeling unappreciated. You've been working hard, you've been attentive to your partner's needs, but you feel your efforts are going unnoticed. The untrained, reactive response is to pull back. You might think, "Well, if they aren't going to appreciate me, I'll stop doing these things." This tit-for-tat approach, while understandable, inevitably shrinks the overall goodwill in the relationship, creating a cold war of diminishing returns. Now apply the discipline of action. You recognize that your feeling of being unappreciated is a judgment about an external, their recognition, which you do not control. What you do control are your own actions. You can choose to continue acting in ways that support the common good, being helpful, being kind, being reliable, because these actions are expressions of your own character. The fulfillment comes from the knowledge that you are living your values. Paradoxically, this shift often transforms the dynamic. When you stop acting for applause, your actions become purer and more powerful. You are no longer a performer waiting for a review, you are a genuine partner. This consistent, non-transactional goodness often, over time, inspires a deeper appreciation and reciprocity, but that is a beautiful byproduct, not the fragile foundation upon which your behavior is built. Your emotional stability and sense of self-worth are rooted in the unshakable ground of your own virtuous actions, making you a true architect of a healthier, more resilient love. Now, with the discipline of action guiding our outward behavior, we turn inward to a practice that sharpens all our Stoic skills into a precise tool for daily growth: the nightly ritual of journaling your reactions. This is not a diary in the traditional sense, where you might simply vent your feelings or recount the day's events. A Stoic journal is something far more powerful. It's a training ground, a private courtroom where you put your own mind on trial. Imagine your mind is like a pond. Throughout the day, interactions with your partner, a forgotten promise, a perceived slight, a moment of intimacy, toss pebbles and sometimes even boulders into the water, creating ripples of emotion. Most of us simply feel the ripples and react. The Stoic journal is where you learn to trace each ripple back to the exact pebble that caused it. You are not just observing the emotion, you are dissecting its origin, uncovering the hidden judgment that gave it life, and then, with the calm clarity of hindsight, rehearsing a wiser, more virtuous response for the future. The structure of this practice is deliberately systematic, designed to move you from passive feeling to empowered understanding. The first step is to honestly record the facts of the situation and your raw emotional reaction. For example, you might write, Tonight, when I was telling my partner about a stressful situation at work, they seemed distracted, scrolling on their phone. I felt a sudden surge of anger and shut down, ending the conversation abruptly. Notice the precision here. You are stating the observable event and your internal emotional response without yet layering on blame or interpretation. This act of objectifying the event creates a crucial space between you and the reaction. The second and most transformative step is to analyze the judgment that bridged the event and your emotion. This is where you ask the pivotal Stoic question: what story did I tell myself about what happened? In this case, the hidden judgment might have been, I judged that their distraction meant they don't care about me or my problems. I assumed my feelings are unimportant to them. There it is, the pebble. It wasn't the scrolling itself that caused the anger. It was your interpretation of the scrolling as a profound sign of disrespect and indifference. The third and final step is to craft a plan for a more virtuous response. This isn't about self-punishment, it's about proactive training. Looking at the judgment you uncovered, you now ask, what would a wiser, more rational, and more loving response have looked like? How can I prepare myself to choose that path next time? You might write, a more virtuous response would have been to recognize that I cannot know why they were on their phone. It could be work-related stress of their own or simple mental fatigue. Instead of shutting down, I could have chosen to express my feeling without accusation. I'm feeling a bit unheard right now. Would it be okay if we talked about this for a few minutes without phones? By writing this down, you are not just imagining a better way, you are etching a new neural pathway, making this calm, assertive communication a more readily available option the next time a similar trigger arises. To make this habit stick, a simple, consistent prompt can be your greatest ally. You don't need a beautiful leather-bound journal. A simple notepad or a digital document will do. Each night, perhaps just before bed, take 5 to 10 minutes and write down just one significant emotional reaction from your romantic day using this 3-part structure. First, write the event and describe what happened factually. Second, write my judgment and excavate the assumption you made. Third, write my new plan and outline the virtuous response you will aim for in the future. The profound power of this practice accumulates over time. After a few weeks, you will begin to see clear patterns emerge. You might discover that your triggers often stem from a deep-seated fear of being ignored or a sensitivity to feeling controlled. The journal becomes a mirror, showing you the recurring cracks in your own reasoning, allowing you to mend them with self-awareness and intentional practice. This nightly audit transforms you from a passenger buffeted by your emotions into the pilot who can navigate through them, steadily building the emotional mastery that leads to a truly peaceful and resilient relationship with yourself and the one you love. Now, let's explore a mental shift that can fundamentally change how you experience every single difficulty in your relationship. We're moving from the nightly reflection in our journals to the real-time reframing of our daily struggles, arriving at the 10th step, seeing every obstacle as an opportunity. The Stoics had a powerful and transformative belief that the impediment to action advances the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In the context of romance, this means that your partner's stubbornness, a frustrating communication pattern, a clash of values, or even your own personal flaws are not roadblocks on your path to a happy relationship. They are, in fact, the very path itself. They are the specialized equipment in the gym of your character, placed there deliberately to strengthen virtues you would otherwise leave underdeveloped. Consider the simple, universal challenge of a partner who has a habit of running late. It's easy to view this as an irritating character flaw, a sign of disrespect for your time, an obstacle to a perfectly smooth evening. You can feel the frustration building each minute you wait, feeding a story of being undervalued. Now apply the Stoic lens. This exact situation, this very impediment, is your personal invitation to practice patience. It is a live drill sent to you today to strengthen your ability to endure minor discomfort without losing your inner peace. It is also an opportunity to practice understanding. Instead of fuming, you could choose to consider what might be causing their lateness, perhaps a chaotic work schedule, a tendency to overcommit, or simply a different internal clock, not to excuse it but to understand it, which is an act of generosity. This single, frustrating moment has just become a multifaceted training session in patience, understanding, and emotional self-regulation. The obstacle didn't ruin your evening. It provided the raw material for you to build a stronger, more compassionate self. This principle scales to even the most profound relationship challenges. Imagine you discover a significant breach of trust. The pain is real and deep, and the easy, understandable narrative is that this event has destroyed your relationship. It is a catastrophic obstacle, but from the Stoic perspective, this devastating impediment presents a set of profound, albeit painful, opportunities. It is a chance to practice the virtue of courage, the courage to face painful truths without falling apart. It is an opportunity to practice justice, to decide on a response that is fair, that considers context and the possibility of atonement, rather than reacting from pure, vengeful emotion. It forces you to practice the difficult art of discernment, to weigh whether the foundation of the relationship is strong enough to warrant the immense effort of rebuilding. And if you choose to walk away, it becomes the ultimate training ground for the virtue of resilience, the strength to endure immense emotional pain and still move forward with your dignity and hope intact. The obstacle, in this case, doesn't just advance the action. It forges a version of you that is wiser, stronger, and more clear-eyed about life and love than the person you were before it happened. To make this more than just a philosophical idea, let's break down a common obstacle into a step-by-step opportunity for training. Your partner is notoriously messy and you are highly organized. The clutter they leave around the shared living space feels like a daily assault on your peace. The standard script leads to nagging, resentment, and a power struggle over tidiness. Here is how you can consciously rewrite that script using this Stoic step. First, when you feel the irritation rise at the sight of a jacket left on the chair, pause and consciously name the opportunity. Say to yourself, "This is my training for patience and tolerance today." Just that simple mental label begins to shift your relationship to the event. Second, proactively choose a virtuous action. Instead of a critical remark, you could choose the virtue of kindness and simply hang the jacket up without a word, your action becoming a small, silent gift rather than a point of conflict. Or you could choose the virtue of clear communication and say, "I feel calmer when the living room is tidy. Could we work on a system for this that works for both of us?" Here, you are practicing assertiveness without aggression. The third part of the training is the internal work you do regardless of their response. If they appreciate your kindness or agree to your system, you have successfully navigated the obstacle with virtue. If they dismiss your request or continue the behavior, your training simply shifts to a new, more advanced station. Now the opportunity is to practice acceptance, the acceptance that you cannot control their habits, only your reaction to them. The obstacle remains, but it is now strengthening your ability to coexist with things you cannot change without letting them rob you of your serenity. By engaging with the messy jacket in this way, you have transformed a petty annoyance into a meaningful exercise in patience, kindness, communication, and acceptance. You are no longer a victim of the clutter. You are an active participant in your own moral development, using the friction of your relationship to polish your character to a brighter shine. This is the alchemy of Stoicism in daily life, turning the lead of everyday irritations into the gold of unshakable inner strength. Now, let's deepen our practice by turning to a principle that acts as the very North Star for all of Stoic philosophy, the call to live in accordance with nature and reason. At first, this might sound abstract, perhaps bringing to mind images of living off the land or following some kind of cosmic rulebook. but in the context of our relationships, this is one of the most practical and grounding ideas you can embrace. To live according to nature means to live in harmony with our fundamental design as human beings. The Stoics observed that we are, by our very nature, two profound things. We are rational and we are social. Our unique gift is our capacity for reason, the ability to step back from blind instinct and choose our response with wisdom. And we are wired for connection, designed to live and cooperate in communities, to care for one another and to build things together. A relationship that is truly according to nature, therefore, is not one ruled by the temporary hurricane of raw passion or the narrow focus of selfish desire, but one built consciously through the twin pillars of rational communication and mutual respect. Think of a relationship as a boat you and your partner are building together to navigate the ocean of life. Raw passion is like a powerful but unpredictable wind. It can fill your sails and propel you forward with incredible speed and excitement. But if it's the only force guiding you, you are at the mercy of the weather, liable to be blown off course or dashed against the rocks the moment the storm hits. Reason, on the other hand, is your rudder and your map. It's what allows you to steer, to plot a course, to make decisions together about where you're going and how you'll handle the swells and the squalls. A relationship that lives by nature and reason uses the wind of passion for its energy and joy, but relies on the steady hand of the rudder to ensure the journey is safe, purposeful, and headed toward a shared destination. It's the difference between a thrilling but dangerous joyride and a meaningful voyage of discovery. This shift from passion-driven to reason-guided manifests most clearly in how we communicate. When we are driven solely by emotion, communication becomes a weapon or a shield. We speak to win an argument, to inflict hurt because we are hurt, or we shut down entirely to protect ourselves. This is communication according to our raw, untrained impulses. Communication according to reason, however, is a tool for understanding and collaboration. It means taking a breath before you speak to ask yourself, what is my goal here? Is it to be right or to understand and be understood? Is my words intended to build a bridge or to burn one down? It involves actively listening to your partner's perspective, not as a threat to your own, but as a piece of essential data about the person you love. You are two rational beings working to solve a shared problem, the problem of how to coexist harmoniously and support each other's growth, rather than two combatants fighting for emotional dominance. This rational, social framework naturally elevates the principle of mutual respect from a nice idea to a non-negotiable foundation. When you see your partner as a fellow rational being, you acknowledge their inherent right to their own thoughts, feelings, and boundaries. You don't have to agree with them, but you are obligated by your own rational nature to treat their perspective with dignity. This eliminates the temptation for manipulation, control, or disrespect. You cannot, in good conscience, use guilt trips, silent treatments, or demeaning language to control a person you genuinely respect as an equal. Your shared goal becomes the common good of the relationship, the health and vitality of the shared project you are building. This transforms daily interactions. A disagreement about finances is no longer a battle over who is right, but a collaborative budgeting session between two rational adults. A difference in parenting styles becomes a conversation about shared values and desired outcomes for your child. The relationship becomes a small, shared society, governed by the laws of reason, fairness, and mutual care, making it not only emotionally satisfying on a deeper level, but also incredibly durable and resilient to the challenges life will inevitably bring. While our focus on reason helps us build a stable and durable partnership, it's a sobering and ultimately liberating truth that grounds our efforts in the most profound reality of all, the reality of our own mortality. This leads us to the 12th step, the practice of memento mori, which is Latin for remember you will die. At first, this might sound morbid or depressing, the kind of thought we actively push away. But for the Stoics, this was not a morbid fixation. It was the ultimate clarifier, a mental tool to burn away the trivial and illuminate what is truly essential. In the context of romance, contemplating the impermanence of your relationship, and indeed of your own life, does not lead to a sense of futility. Quite the opposite, it injects your love with a powerful, present-moment intensity, a deep and urgent appreciation that transforms how you interact with your partner every single day. Imagine holding a beautiful, fragile piece of glasswork. Knowing it could slip from your hands and shatter at any moment doesn't make you hold it with fearful, trembling anxiety. It makes you hold it with greater care, with more focused attention, with a profound appreciation for its delicate beauty in the here and now. You don't waste time being annoyed by a tiny imperfection in the glass. You are simply grateful to be holding it at all. This is precisely what memento mori does for your relationship, your partner, your connection, the time you have together. This is the fragile, irreplaceable glasswork. The awareness that it is temporary, that one day, either through separation or death, it will end, is not a curse. It is the very insight that compels you to stop treating it as an ordinary, permanent fixture and start treating it as the extraordinary, fleeting miracle that it truly is. This awareness immediately reorders your priorities. Those petty grievances that can consume so much emotional energy, the towel left on the floor, the cap left off the toothpaste, the sarcastic comment made in a moment of stress, suddenly lose nearly all their power. When you consciously remember that your time with this person is finite, that there will come a last conversation, a last laugh, a last touch, the idea of spending even 10 minutes of that precious time locked in a silent standoff over a household chore feels not just pointless but almost sacrilegious. Memento mori acts as a mental sieve, filtering out the insignificant irritations and leaving only the golden nuggets of genuine connection. It fosters a spirit of quick forgiveness because you understand that holding onto a grudge is like poisoning your own well. You are wasting the limited, clean water of your shared time by contaminating it with yesterday's bitterness. The goal becomes to never let the sun go down on your anger, not because it's a nice proverb, but because you are acutely aware that you cannot guarantee another sunrise together. To bring this from a philosophical concept into the rhythm of your daily life, you can adopt a simple but powerful mental habit. Each morning, as you begin your day, take just a moment to look at your partner, whether they are asleep beside you or across the breakfast table, and silently remind yourself, this is a finite person. Our time together is a finite gift. This isn't a sad thought, it's a focusing thought. It sets an intention for the day. It prepares you to choose connection over correction. When they tell you a story about their day, you will be more inclined to put down your phone and truly listen, because you are hearing the voice of someone whose stories are not infinite. When you feel the urge to criticize, you will be more likely to pause and ask if this minor fault is truly worth the cost of a moment of harmony. This practice cultivates a profound sense of urgency, not a frantic, panicked urgency, but a calm, determined urgency to love fully and authentically right now, without waiting for a more convenient time or assuming there will always be a tomorrow to make things right. It's the understanding that the most important moment in your relationship is always this present one, for it is the only one you are ever guaranteed. Strength of character, that inner fortress we've been building, is not a vague, shapeless ideal. It requires a blueprint, a clear set of architectural principles that define its structure and purpose. This brings us to a pivotal moment of self-definition, the conscious act of determining your personal virtues. This is far more than just a list of nice-sounding words. It is the process of deciding who you are at your core and, by extension, what you are truly looking for in a partner. A virtue, in the Stoic sense, is an excellence of character, a quality like honesty, loyalty, courage, compassion, or justice that you cultivate because it allows you to live a good and flourishing life, regardless of external circumstances. To define your virtues is to forge an internal moral compass, a reliable guide that keeps you headed toward your true north when the fog of attraction, loneliness, or social pressure rolls in. Without this defined compass, our dating lives are often guided by the most visible and seductive landmarks: a dazzling appearance, a thrilling sense of mystery, a shared but shallow interest, or the intoxicating high of being desired. These external markers are like bright, flashing lights that can easily lead us off course. We might find ourselves deeply involved with someone who is charming and exciting, but who lacks the fundamental integrity we truly crave. We overlook a dismissive comment because the chemistry is electric, or we tolerate unreliability because the connection feels so intensely passionate in the moment. We are navigating by the weather, the temporary emotional climate of the relationship, rather than by the fixed stars of our deepest values. The inevitable result is a relationship built on a foundation of sand, beautiful to look at from the outside but unstable and unable to withstand the first real storm. The transformative power of this step lies in shifting your primary filter in dating from "how do they make me feel" to "what is the quality of their character?" This is not about creating a cold, clinical checklist, but about aligning your heart with your highest principles. The feeling of attraction is important, but it becomes the invitation to explore, not the final verdict. You might feel that initial spark with someone, but your virtue compass then kicks in, prompting you to observe. Do their actions match their words? Are they kind to people who can do nothing for them, like a server in a restaurant? How do they handle frustration or disappointment? Do they take responsibility for their mistakes, or do they deflect blame? You are no longer just evaluating chemistry. You are conducting a respectful, observant audit of their character, measuring it against the virtues you have already decided are essential for your own life. So, how do you begin this process of self-definition? It requires a quiet, honest conversation with yourself, far removed from the influence of any specific person you might be dating. Take a piece of paper or open a blank document and write down the 3 to 5 virtues that are absolutely non-negotiable for you. These are the qualities you are committed to embodying yourself, and that you must see, at least in seed form, in a long-term partner. For instance, your list might be integrity, kindness, and emotional courage. Now, don't just leave them as words. Define what they mean to you in practical, behavioral terms. For you, integrity might mean they do what they say they will do. They are honest even when it's uncomfortable. Their private actions align with their public persona. A kindness could be defined as they show empathy and patience, not just to me, but to strangers and in stressful situations. They are gentle in their criticism. And emotional courage might mean they are willing to be vulnerable and express their true feelings. They can have difficult conversations without resorting to personal attacks or running away. This clearly defined list becomes your most powerful tool. It allows you to make conscious choices rather than being swept along by transient emotions. When you meet someone new who is incredibly attractive and fun, but you notice they frequently tell small, self-aggrandizing lies, your virtue of integrity sends a clear signal. It doesn't mean you must reject them immediately, but it does mean you proceed with clear-eyed awareness, understanding that this is a point of misalignment with your core values. Conversely, you might meet someone who doesn't fit a superficial type, but who consistently demonstrates profound kindness, reliability, and respect. Your virtue compass directs your attention to the deeper, more durable qualities that actually build a lasting partnership. You are choosing a partner based on the content of their character, which is the single most reliable predictor of a relationship's long-term health and happiness. This is how you move from chasing a feeling to building a shared life with someone whose soul resonates with your own. This profound sense of individual character we've just defined now opens the door to an even wider perspective, to a concept that can fundamentally reshape how we experience our relationships, not as isolated islands, but as part of a vast, interconnected human continent. We have arrived at the 14th step, the practice of sympatheia. This beautiful Stoic principle translates to a deep, felt sense of interconnectedness, the understanding that we are all fundamentally linked, members of a single human community, all striving, failing, loving, and hurting in remarkably similar ways. In the context of romance, sympatheia is the mental shift that allows you to see your partner not as an independent actor whose sole purpose is to either satisfy or frustrate your personal desires, but as a fellow traveler on the same difficult, beautiful human journey. Their flaws, their irritations, their moments of weakness or fear, these are not unique personal attacks on your peace. They are manifestations of the universal human condition, the same shared condition from which your own imperfections and struggles arise. Think of human nature as a vast, ancient forest. Each one of us is a single, unique tree. We have our own shape, our own scars from past storms, our own branches reaching for the sun in a particular way. But beneath the surface, all our roots are interwoven in the same soil, drawing from the same source of water and nutrients. We are all subject to the same laws of nature. We all need light, we all face droughts, we all grow stronger through resistance. When your partner acts in a way that you find frustrating when they are anxious or short-tempered, or distant sympatheia invites you to look past the surface behavior of that single tree and remember the shared forest floor. Their anxiety is not a bizarre, personal flaw. It is a human response to uncertainty, a feeling you have undoubtedly experienced yourself. Their short temper is often the symptom of an unseen root, a pain or a pressure you may not be able to see, just as your own irritability often stems from hidden stresses. This is not about making excuses for poor behavior, but about cultivating a foundational empathy that seeks to understand before it seeks to condemn. This practice is perhaps the most powerful antidote we have to the poison of judgment. Judgment thrives on a sense of separation, on the belief that I would never do that, or my way of handling this is the right way. Sympatheia dissolves this illusion of separation. It reminds you that the capacity for every human emotion and action resides within you too. The jealousy you feel when your partner talks to an attractive colleague. You have felt the stirrings of that same green-eyed monster, the defensiveness they show when you offer constructive criticism. You have also, at times, put up walls to protect a fragile part of yourself. By recognizing your own shared humanity with your partner, their flaws become less like personal affronts and more like mirrors, reflecting back the very same struggles you yourself contend with. This doesn't mean you become a doormat tolerating anything. It means you approach conflict from a place of shared identity rather than opposition. You are not a perfect person judging a flawed one. You are one flawed human being working with another to navigate a challenge that is, at its core, profoundly human. Let's make this tangible by applying it to a very common source of tension: differing emotional communication styles. Imagine one partner, let's call him Alex, is a natural talker. When stress hits, Alex needs to process out loud, to talk through every nuance of a problem. The other partner, Sam, is more internal. Under stress, Sam becomes quiet, retreating into a shell to think and regain equilibrium. Without the lens of sympatheia, this difference can feel like a personal rejection. Alex might judge Sam's silence as cold, uncaring, or passive-aggressive. Sam might judge Alex's need to talk as intrusive, overwhelming, or demanding. Each sees the other's natural coping mechanism as a character flaw directed at them. Now, let's view this through the practice of interconnectedness. Alex can pause and recognize that Sam's quietness is not a weapon, but a different strand of the human response to stress, a need for space and introspection that Alex has also felt in other contexts, even if not as a primary mode. Sam can recognize that Alex's need to talk is not an assault, but a different human strategy for managing anxiety, a need for connection and verbal processing that Sam can understand, even if it's not their own instinct. Armed with this understanding, the conversation shifts entirely. Instead of Alex accusing, You always shut down and leave me alone with my problems. Sympatheia allows for a bridge. I know we handle stress differently. When I get anxious, my instinct is to talk it out. I realize your instinct might be to go inward. I respect that. Could we find a middle ground where I feel heard and you also get the space you need? This approach comes from a place of we are in this together, just with different tools, rather than your way of being is wrong. You are no longer fighting against your partner's nature. You are collaborating with a fellow human to harmonize your different expressions of that nature. This is the practical magic of sympatheia. It transforms the battlefield of a relationship into a workshop, where two inherently flawed but interconnected people are working side by side to build something stronger, not because they are perfect, but because they recognize they are perfectly, beautifully, and sometimes frustratingly human together. Building on this profound sense of shared humanity, we arrive at a tool so practical and immediate that it can serve as your first line of defense the very moment anxiety begins to whisper in your ear. This is the 15th step, a moment-to-moment technique for managing romantic anxiety, using the simple, razor-sharp filter of a single question. Throughout this journey, we've established the foundational principle of the dichotomy of control, the distinction between your own thoughts and actions, which you command, and everything else which you do not. This step is about taking that grand philosophical concept and forging it into a pocket-sized tool you can wield in real time. The instant a worrying thought begins to cloud your mind. It is the practice of pausing when you feel that familiar clutch of fear in your stomach or that spiral of doubt in your thoughts, and asking with deliberate clarity, is this within my control? The power of this question lies not in its complexity but in its surgical precision. It acts like a mental sorting hat, instantly separating the raw materials of your worry into two distinct piles, freeing you from the exhausting task of carrying everything at once. On one side, you place the things that are genuinely within your sphere of command, your own perceptions, your intentions, your actions, your words, and your values. On the other side, you place everything else, the vast and turbulent ocean of external events that includes your partner's feelings, their past, their decisions, their moods, and their judgments. When a thought like, do they still love me, or are they losing interest, arises, you don't engage with the terrifying, unanswerable mystery of it. You immediately subject it to the filter, is their feeling of love for me within my control? The answer, of course, is a resounding no. You cannot command another person's heart. You cannot negotiate or demand genuine affection. To try is to attempt to command the wind, and it will only leave you breathless and defeated. The crucial second part of this practice, the part that actually liberates your mental energy, is the conscious act of release. Once you have identified that the object of your worry, their love, their fidelity, their commitment resides firmly outside your control, you make a deliberate choice. You mentally open your hand and let it go. You visualize the worry as a leaf caught in a stream, and you consciously stop trying to swim against the current to retrieve it. You acknowledge the thought, you acknowledge the fear, but you refuse to invest your precious mental and emotional energy into solving a problem that is not yours to solve. This is not a passive resignation. It is an active and empowering decision to stop wasting your finite resources on a futile endeavor. The anxiety might not vanish instantly, but by ceasing to feed it with your frantic mental efforts, you rob it of its fuel, and it will naturally begin to dissipate like a fire running out of oxygen. Having released your grip on the uncontrollable, you are now free to perform the most empowering part of the entire process, the strategic redirection of your focus. Your energy, which was moments ago being consumed by the black hole of an unanswerable question, is now available to you again. You consciously pivot your attention to the pile of things that are within your control. You ask the follow-up question, if their feeling is not within my control, what is within my control right now? This is where you reclaim your agency. Your answer might be, I can control how I choose to interpret this situation. I can control acting in a loving and trustworthy manner myself. I can control communicating my needs clearly and kindly. I can control maintaining my own dignity and self-respect regardless of their actions. You redirect your focus from the terrifying abyss of another's mind to the solid ground of your own character and conduct. Let's make this absolutely concrete with a scenario that almost everyone in a modern relationship will recognize. You've sent a text to your partner and hours have gone by with no reply. The initial impression is simple: no message has been received, but without the filter, the mind instantly constructs a cathedral of catastrophe. They're ignoring me. They're with someone else. They're angry with me. The relationship is over. The anxiety builds with each passing minute, a physical tension in your body as you check your phone again and again. Now let's replay this with the filter engaged. The worrying thought arises: they are deliberately ignoring my text. You pause. You ask the question: is their action of replying to my text within my control? No, it is not. You consciously release it. You take a breath and mentally place their reply in the external pile, acknowledging that you cannot force it. The anxiety is still there, but you have stopped adding kindling to it. Now you redirect. You ask, what is within my control in this situation? Your list is immediate and empowering. You control whether you send a follow-up message that is needy and accusatory, or whether you remain patient and assume the best. You control whether you spend the next 3 hours obsessively staring at your phone, or whether you put it away and engage fully with your work, your hobbies, or your friends. You control the story you tell yourself. You can choose the narrative of deliberate neglect, or you can choose a narrative of reasonable possibility. They are likely in a meeting, their phone died, or they are simply busy and will reply when they can. You control your own actions, so you might decide, I will give this until tonight, and if I haven't heard back, I will call them once calmly. To check in, by applying this filter, you have transformed a situation where you were a passive victim of circumstance into a situation where you are an active agent, making conscious choices about your own behavior and mental state. You are no longer a hostage waiting for a message. You are a sovereign individual deciding how to spend your time and protect your peace. This simple, repeatable question is the bridge that carries you from the stormy seas of romantic anxiety to the steady shore of your own unwavering inner command. Let's explore a subtle but deeply stabilizing mental habit that the Stoics called the reserve clause. A kind of silent caveat you can add to every hope and plan you have in your love life. This is the quiet practice of internally appending the phrase fate permitting to your intentions. For example, instead of mentally declaring, I will have a perfect romantic evening with my partner tonight, you frame it as, I intend to have a wonderful romantic evening with my partner tonight, fate permitting. This tiny shift in language might seem insignificant, but its impact on your psychological resilience is enormous. It's not about expecting things to go wrong or adopting a cynical attitude. It's about building a flexible expectation that acknowledges the simple truth of our existence. We are not the sole authors of our story. The world is a complex, unpredictable place, and other people have their own wills. By adding this mental rider to your plans, you create a buffer between your desires and reality. One that prevents disappointment from shattering your inner peace when things don't unfold exactly as you envision. The power of this practice lies in how it redefines success. Without the reserve clause, your emotional well-being becomes entirely dependent on a specific, rigid outcome. Your success is a wonderful date. Your failure is anything less. You've attached your happiness to a fragile, external event that you only partially control. When your partner arrives late or is stressed from work or the restaurant loses your reservation, the entire evening feels like a personal failure. The reserve clause changes the metric of success from the outcome to your intention and effort. Your success is now rooted in your own actions, showing up with a positive and loving attitude, being fully present, doing your part to create a connection. The external outcome, whether the evening is perfect or fraught with minor disasters, is placed in the hands of fate. This means that even if the evening is a comedic series of mishaps, you can still view it as a success because you upheld your end of the bargain. You acted with good intention, and the rest was not yours to command. This is how you cultivate a spirit of light-hearted acceptance, turning potential frustration into a shared story you can laugh about later, rather than a source of internal turmoil and resentment. To see this in action, consider a more significant romantic plan, like preparing to propose marriage. The untrained mind fixates on a single, perfect script: the sunset on the beach, the ring presented flawlessly, the tearful yes, the romantic embrace. This fantasy is so vivid and so specific that it leaves no room for life to happen. Now apply the reserve clause. Your plan becomes, I will prepare a heartfelt and sincere proposal, fate permitting. You put in all the effort, you get the ring, you scout the location, you practice your words. You do your part with excellence and love, but you also hold the plan lightly. You acknowledge that a storm might roll in, the ring might temporarily get stuck in your pocket, your partner might have a headache, or they might be so surprised they don't react the way you imagined. By holding this caveat in your heart, you are psychologically prepared for these variables. If they occur, they are not catastrophic disruptions of your perfect moment. They are simply part of the unfolding story, the fate that was always permitted to intervene. This mental preparedness allows you to adapt with grace and humor, ensuring that the core of the moment, the love and the commitment, shines through, untarnished by rigid expectations. The event becomes beautiful for what it is, not a failure for what it wasn't. You can weave this practice into the very fabric of your daily romantic life. It starts with monitoring your internal self-talk. When you think, my partner will absolutely love this gift I bought them, gently add the silent caveat, a fate permitting. This isn't a doubt about your taste, it's an acknowledgement that their reaction belongs to them, not to you. It protects you from feeling crushed if the gift doesn't land as you'd hoped. When you set a goal like, we are going to stop arguing and have a perfectly harmonious month, reframe it as, we are both going to try our best to communicate with more patience and understanding this month, fate permitting. This acknowledges that life will still bring stressors and you are both human. The goal is the effort and the intention, not an impossible state of perpetual peace. By making this a default setting of your mind, you build an incredible resilience. You become like a willow tree that bends in the storm rather than a mighty oak that cracks. You invest fully in your actions, you hope for the best, but you release your stranglehold on the results. This creates a relationship atmosphere that is light, adaptable, and free from the heavy pressure of perfection, allowing love to flourish not in a hothouse of controlled conditions, but in the wild and beautiful garden of real life. And this brings us to a pivotal moment in our journey, a fork in the road that appears countless times in every relationship, the split-second gap between a raw, untamed reaction and a thoughtfully chosen response. This is the 17th step, the conscious decision to choose your response, not to be hijacked by your reaction. Imagine your mind as a faithful guard dog. Its primary, instinctual job is to react. It hears a strange noise and barks immediately, a loud, automatic, and often disproportionate sound meant to scare off a potential threat. In our romantic lives, this guard dog is our limbic system, our emotional brain. When our partner says or does something that feels like a threat, a critical comment, a forgotten promise, a dismissive tone, the bark is our knee-jerk reaction, a sharp retort, a slamming door, a cold withdrawal into silence. It is immediate, visceral, and entirely self-protective. A chosen response, on the other hand, is the work of the master of the house. It's the person who hears the dog bark, gets up, looks out the window, assesses the actual situation. Is it a dangerous intruder or just a stray cat? And then decides on the most appropriate and effective course of action. This is your rational prefrontal cortex taking the reins. The Stoic aim is not to muzzle the dog forever. The bark is a useful signal, but to train yourself so that you, the master, are always the one who ultimately decides what happens next. This distinction is the very essence of emotional mastery, and it plays out in the theater of everyday conflict. Consider a classic scenario. You've had a long, draining day, and you're looking forward to a quiet evening with your partner. They come home and immediately launch into a story about a frustrating coworker, talking animatedly without asking about your day. The guard dog in your mind immediately barks. The feeling is one of neglect and irritation. The knee-jerk reaction is to interrupt with a sarcastic, "Well, it's great that your day was so interesting," or to simply shut down, offering monosyllabic answers until the atmosphere in the room turns cold and heavy. This reaction is driven by the raw, unexamined impression that your needs are being ignored. It feels justified in the moment, but it almost guarantees an evening of tension, a defensive counter-reaction from your partner, and a deepening of the very disconnect you were feeling. The chosen response, however, requires you to catch the bark. You feel the heat of irritation rise, but you insert that crucial Stoic pause. You take a breath, literally or mentally. In that space, you engage your reason. You might reflect on the principle that your partner's behavior is not a malicious attack, but likely a reflection of their own day. You remember your virtue of patience and understanding. You let them finish their story, and then you consciously choose your action. You might say, "That sounds really frustrating. I've had a tough day too, and I'd love to tell you about it after we get dinner started." This response, born from a moment of intentional reflection, addresses your own need without invalidating theirs. It builds a bridge instead of a wall. The process of moving from reaction to response can be broken down into a simple, three-part mental ritual that you can practice in real time. The first part is the pause. This is the non-negotiable foundation. When you feel the surge of emotion, the anger, the jealousy, the hurt, your first and most important task is to do absolutely nothing. You might excuse yourself to another room, you might take 3 deep, slow breaths, or you might simply count silently to 5 in your head. The goal is to create a buffer zone between the stimulus and your action. This pause physically interrupts the amygdala hijack, giving your rational mind a chance to catch up. The second part is the inquiry. In this brief window, you ask yourself a set of clarifying questions rooted in Stoic principles. What is the actual, objective event, separate from my story about it? What virtue is being called for here, patience, courage, or justice? Is my current impulse aligned with my long-term goal of a loving, respectful relationship? This inquiry forces you to move from the emotional realm to the intellectual realm, objectifying the situation. The third and final part is the choice. Having paused and inquired, you are no longer on autopilot. You now have the freedom to select a response that aligns with your character, not your temporary emotion. You are no longer a puppet being jerked by your partner's strings. You are the puppeteer, deliberately guiding your own actions. To see the profound difference this makes, let's apply it to a more heated conflict, like discovering your partner lied about something relatively small, such as how much they spent on a personal purchase. The reactive path is a wildfire of emotion. The initial bark is one of betrayal and anger. The knee-jerk reaction is an explosion. "You lied to me. How can I ever trust you again?" What else are you hiding? This reaction, while understandably fueled by hurt, immediately escalates the situation into a catastrophic battle over character and trust. It puts your partner on the defensive, ensuring a fight rather than a conversation. Now, let's walk through the responsive path. You feel the shock and the hurt. You consciously pause. You might say, "I need a moment. This is upsetting, and I don't want to say something I'll regret." You walk away for 10 minutes. During that time, you inquire. You separate the fact they misrepresented the cost from the terrifying story you're telling yourself about a pattern of deceit. You consider the virtue of justice, seeking the full truth before passing a final judgment. You remind yourself of your goal, to understand why this happened and to repair the breach, not to simply punish. When you return, you have the space to choose your response. You might say calmly, "I saw the receipt for the purchase and it was quite a bit more than you told me. I'm feeling hurt and confused about why you felt you needed to be untruthful about it. Can you help me understand what was behind that?" This approach is firm and holds them accountable, but it is not an attack. It opens a door for dialogue, for understanding the underlying reason, perhaps shame about spending or fear of your reaction, and for collaboratively finding a solution. The reaction burns the relationship down to punish a crime. The response contains the fire and starts the process of rebuilding a stronger structure in its place. This is how you protect your personal integrity, by ensuring that your actions are always a reflection of your deepest values, not just a mirror of your most fleeting feelings. Now, with this powerful ability to choose your response firmly in your grasp, you're ready to harness that energy in the most constructive way possible. This brings us to a step that transforms empowerment into tangible action, deliberately focusing on your circle of influence. You'll recall we began with the dichotomy of control, learning to distinguish between what is ours to command and what is not. The circle of influence is the dynamic, proactive expression of that very same principle. Think of it this way: inside the vast territory of things you cannot control, your partner's mood, their past, their choices, there is a smaller, intensely fertile patch of ground that belongs entirely to you. This is your circle of influence. It contains all the thoughts you can think, the words you can speak, the skills you can develop, and the actions you can take that genuinely have the power to improve your relationship. While you can't force your partner to be more affectionate, you can absolutely influence the overall climate of affection by consistently initiating warm physical contact yourself. You can't control their stress levels, but you can influence the home environment by managing your own reactions and creating a more peaceful space. The shift from a passive focus on your partner's circle of control to an active focus on your own circle of influence is the shift from feeling like a powerless victim to becoming the chief architect of your relational world. The magic of this focus is that your circle of influence is not a fixed small space. It's more like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more it expands. When you pour your energy into the things you can actually change, your own behavior, your communication style, your emotional reactions, you become a source of positive contagion in the relationship. This stands in stark contrast to the draining and futile effort of trying to control your partner's circle, which is like trying to push water uphill. Every minute spent anxiously monitoring their text habits, resenting their personality traits, or scheming to change their mind is a minute stolen from the garden you could be tending in your own backyard. And a neglected garden, as we know, grows only weeds of resentment, powerlessness, and bitterness. But when you turn your back on that futile effort and walk into your own circle, you pick up your tools. You start planting seeds of appreciation, watering them with consistent kindness, and pulling the weeds of your own negative assumptions. This focused labor doesn't just make your own plot beautiful, it often inspires the person next door to start tending their own garden too. Your proactive change becomes an invitation, not a demand. Let's illuminate this with a clear, practical example. Imagine you feel your partner has become distant and isn't sharing their feelings with you. The classic circle of control approach would be to focus all your energy on them. You might pester them with questions. What's wrong? Why won't you talk to me? You never open up anymore. This approach, though born from a desire for connection, feels like pressure and interrogation. It usually causes the other person to retreat even further, shrinking the possibility for intimacy. Now let's apply the circle of influence strategy. You stop focusing on their silence, which you cannot control, and you turn your attention to what you can influence. You can influence the safety of the emotional environment. So you might start sharing your own feelings more vulnerably without demanding anything in return, simply modeling the openness you wish to see. You can influence the quality of your listening, so the next time they do share something small, you give them your undivided attention, putting your phone away, making eye contact, and reflecting back what you hear without immediately jumping to advice or judgment. You can influence the daily rituals of connection. You might institute a 10-minute daily walk where the only rule is to be together without the pressure of a heavy conversation. Or you might commit to a simple, consistent greeting and goodbye ritual that communicates "you matter to me." These are all actions firmly within your circle. You are not trying to extract intimacy, you are cultivating the soil in which intimacy can naturally grow. Over time, this consistent, non-coercive focus on your own influential actions makes you a safer, more attractive person to open up to, dramatically increasing the likelihood that your partner will voluntarily choose to step back into a more connected space. To put this into practice right away, you can conduct a simple but powerful audit. Take a piece of paper and draw 2 concentric circles. Label the large outer ring circle of concern. In this ring, list all the things about your relationship that worry you but that you cannot directly control. This might include my partner's career stress, their relationship with their family, their tendency to be critical, or how much quality time they initiate. Getting these worries out of your head and onto paper is in itself a liberating act. It objectifies them and contains them. Now look at the smaller inner circle. Label this your circle of influence. Here you will list all the corresponding actions and attitudes that are within your power. For every item in the outer circle, ask yourself, what can I do, say, or become in response to this? If you're concerned about their stress, your influential action might be, I can prepare a relaxing evening once a week, or I can learn to not take their grumpy mood personally. If you're worried about their criticism, your influence might be, I can practice responding calmly instead defensively, or I can clearly and kindly communicate how certain comments make me feel. If you want more quality time, your influence is, I can proactively plan and suggest a date I think we'd both enjoy, and I can be fully present and engaging during the time we do spend together. The moment you complete this exercise, your path forward becomes dazzlingly clear. Your energy now has a direction. Instead of spinning in circles of anxiety about what they are or aren't doing, you have a concrete list of personal projects that empower you, that improve your own character, and that, almost as a byproduct, stand the best possible chance of creating the positive change you truly desire in your relationship. Just as we strengthen our bodies not by avoiding effort but by consistently seeking it out in the gym, we can forge a more resilient heart by deliberately leaning into the very discomforts we normally shy away from. This is the essence of the 19th step, the practice of voluntary discomfort. At its core, this is about building what we might call emotional calluses. Think of a guitarist's fingertips. When they first start playing, the strings bite into their soft skin, causing real pain. But by repeatedly pressing those strings, they develop tough, protective calluses. The pain subsides and they can play for hours with ease and confidence. The strings haven't changed, the guitarist's capacity to interact with them has. In romance, our fears and anxieties are like those sharp strings. We fear difficult conversations, we dread the quiet of a night alone, we feel a deep unease with vulnerability. Our instinct is to build a soft life, to pad our relationships with avoidance and distraction. But this leaves us emotionally fragile. The first small conflict feels catastrophic, a weekend alone feels like abandonment, and any hint of rejection sends us into a tailspin. Voluntary discomfort is the conscious decision to press those strings anyway, to willingly engage with minor hardships to build a tolerance that makes the inevitable major ones far less intimidating. This practice transforms your relationship with neediness and anxiety. Neediness at its root is a fear of loss and a dependency on external circumstances for your sense of okayness. It's the voice that whispers, "I must avoid this argument at all costs or they might leave me," or "I can't bear the thought of a Saturday night without plans with them." When you voluntarily step into the very scenarios you fear, you perform a powerful experiment on your own mind. You prove to yourself through direct experience that you can survive. You can have a difficult conversation, and even if it's tense, the world does not end. You can spend an evening completely alone and discover that solitude is not loneliness, but can be a source of peace and self-replenishment. Each time you do this, you file down the sharp edge of that particular fear. The monster under the bed loses its power once you've looked under there and seen it's just a dusty old suitcase. You start to relate to your partner from a place of genuine want rather than a desperate need, which is the foundation of all healthy, mature love. Let's bring this philosophy to life with some practical, actionable scenarios you can start implementing today. A powerful place to begin is with digital detachment. Make a conscious choice to leave your phone in another room for an entire evening, deliberately creating a space where you cannot check for messages or scroll through social media. Notice the initial itch of anxiety, the impulse to just quickly check. Sit with that discomfort. Don't fight it, just observe it. You are building a callus against the modern anxiety of constant connection, proving to your brain that you are perfectly fine without that instantaneous digital validation. Another profound practice is to intentionally spend quality time alone. If you're in a relationship, plan an evening or even a full day where you and your partner pursue separate interests. Don't just tolerate the separation, lean into it. Go for a long walk by yourself, visit a museum alone, or cook yourself a nice meal. The goal is to actively enjoy your own company, reinforcing the truth that your happiness is an internal project, not an external one. This practice dramatically reduces clinginess and the pressure you might unconsciously place on your partner to be your sole source of entertainment and fulfillment. Perhaps the most impactful form of voluntary discomfort is the proactive initiation of a vulnerable conversation. This isn't about picking a fight. It's about choosing to address a small, lingering tension that you would normally let slide. For instance, maybe your partner has a habit of making plans without consulting you first. Instead of simmering in quiet resentment, you could choose a calm moment and say, "I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind. I sometimes feel a bit left out when plans are made without us checking in first. It's not a huge deal, but I'd love it if we could try to touch base before committing to things." This conversation is voluntary discomfort. Your heart might be pounding, you're risking a moment of tension, but you are also building a callus against the fear of conflict. You are training yourself to value clear communication over temporary peace, and in doing so, you are preventing small issues from festering into major resentments. Every time you willingly have one of these small, brave conversations, you strengthen your ability to handle the larger, unavoidable ones that every long-term relationship will eventually face. You are not just building resilience, you are actively constructing a more honest, transparent, and deeply connected partnership. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most challenging yet liberating practices in love, the discipline of seeing your partner exactly as they are, not as you wish them to be. This is the moment you take off the rose-colored glasses, not to see the world as gray and bleak, but to see its true colors with a clarity that is both sobering and profoundly peaceful. When you first fall for someone, it's natural and beautiful to be swept up in their best qualities. You see their potential, their kindness, their intelligence, and you project onto them the ideal of a perfect partner. This idealization is like a beautiful hand-painted portrait you hang over the real person. For a while, you only look at the portrait, you admire it, you fall in love with it. But the real person is still there, living and breathing behind the canvas with all their complexities, their flaws, their human inconsistencies. The trouble begins when you become so attached to the portrait that you start to resent the real person for not perfectly matching the image you've created. You get frustrated when they don't act according to the script you wrote for them in your mind. This disconnect between the ideal and the real is the source of immense, unnecessary suffering in relationships. The Stoic antidote to this is radical objectivity. It means consciously setting aside your hopes, your fantasies, and your desires for who this person could be, and instead gathering the courage to see who they actually are right now, based on the consistent evidence of their character and actions over time. This isn't about becoming cynical or hypercritical. It's about moving from a love based on projection to a love based on perception. You are swapping the fragile, beautiful portrait for a clear, clean mirror that reflects reality without distortion. This shift is crucial because you can only build a lasting, stable relationship with a real person. You cannot build a life with a fantasy. When you love the idealized portrait, you are setting yourself up for a future of disappointment because the real person will inevitably, and quite reasonably, fail to live up to an image that only exists in your head. But when you love the real person with all their glorious imperfections, you are loving something solid and true. Your love is no longer conditional on them transforming into your ideal. It becomes a choice to embrace them in their full, authentic humanity. To practice this, you must become a gentle but relentless collector of data. Stop listening so intently to their words and promises, and start paying much closer attention to their patterns of behavior. What someone says can be a beautiful intention, but what they consistently do is the truth of their character. If a person says they value honesty, but you catch them in frequent, small lies, the data points toward a character that is, in practice, comfortable with deceit. If they talk about wanting a deep, committed relationship, but their actions show a pattern of emotional unavailability and pulling away when things get serious, that is the data. Your hope that they will change is not data. Your memory of one wonderfully intimate weekend is an outlier, not the trend. You must look at the whole picture, the full collection of their actions, and ask yourself with clear-eyed honesty, what does this pattern reveal about their core values, their emotional capacity, and their character? This is not an accusation, it's an assessment. You are gathering information to decide if this real person is someone you can build a compatible life with, not if the idealized version of them would be perfect. A powerful way to implement this is to conduct a simple reality check exercise. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write the ideal. This is where you list all the hopes, dreams, and fantasies you have projected onto your partner. You might write things like, ideal, he is my soulmate who will always intuitively understand my emotional needs, or ideal, she is going to become more spontaneous and adventurous with me. Then on the right side, write the reality. Here, you list only observable, consistent behaviors free from interpretation. Based on the left side example, the reality might be, reality, when I am upset, he often becomes quiet and seems uncomfortable and rarely asks follow-up questions. Or reality, she prefers a predictable routine and has declined my last 3 suggestions for impulsive weekend trips. The act of physically writing this down creates a stark, undeniable contrast. It forces you to confront the gap between the story you are telling yourself and the person who is actually standing in front of you. The goal isn't to declare the reality bad, but to see it for what it is. Perhaps the reality is that he shows care by doing practical things, not by discussing feelings. Perhaps the reality is that she finds security in routine. The question then becomes, can you love and accept that person, rather than waiting for them to become the person on the left side of the page? This practice is the ultimate form of respect, both for your partner and for yourself. When you see your partner as they are, you stop trying to change them. You release them from the burden of your expectations, allowing them the freedom to be their authentic self. This creates a space of incredible safety and acceptance in the relationship. And for you, it is the ultimate act of self-care. It prevents you from wasting years of your life in a negotiation with a fantasy, hoping against the evidence that someone will transform. It allows you to make a clear-eyed choice. Either you can embrace the real person with all their beautiful flaws and limitations and build a love that is grounded and resilient, or you can recognize a fundamental incompatibility and have the courage to walk away, not with bitterness, but with the sober understanding that the person you hoped for never actually existed. Seeing people as they are is not the death of romance. It is the birth of a love that is deep, genuine, and strong enough to withstand the weight of reality. This inner fortress of self-sufficiency we've been building brings us to one of the most liberating destinations on the entire Stoic path, the profound art of contentment. This is not the fleeting happiness that depends on a date going well or receiving a validating text message. Stoic contentment is something far more stable and durable. It is a deep-seated sense of sufficiency that comes from knowing you are living in alignment with your virtues, regardless of your relationship status. It is the understanding that you are already a complete person, and that a partner is not someone who completes you, but someone with whom you choose to share your already complete life. When your fundamental sense of okayness is sourced from within, from your integrity, your resilience, your capacity for kindness, you become emotionally self-reliant. You stop looking at a relationship as the well you must drink from to quench your thirst for validation, and you start seeing it as a beautiful river you can walk alongside, appreciating its flow without feeling you will perish if it ever runs dry. This shift from external dependency to internal sufficiency has a remarkable and almost paradoxical effect on your attractiveness as a partner. Neediness, which is essentially the shadow cast by a lack of inner contentment, is one of the least attractive qualities in the world of romance. It manifests as clinginess, as a constant seeking of reassurance, as a fear of abandonment that hangs in the air like a heavy scent. People can sense this emotional hunger, and it often pushes them away, not out of malice, but from a natural instinct for self-preservation. Conversely, a person who is genuinely content within themselves carries a magnetic calm. They are not desperate for a relationship to give them value. They see a relationship as an opportunity to share the value they already possess. This makes you a far more appealing partner because you are coming from a place of offering rather than taking. You are able to be truly present, to listen, to love generously without the ulterior motive of trying to extract a sense of self-worth from the other person. Your peace is not something they are responsible for creating or maintaining, which lifts an immense burden off the relationship and allows a genuine, lightweight connection to flourish. This inner fortress provides you with absolute protection from the emotional roller coaster that defines so much of modern dating. When your mood is tethered to external events, a match on an app, the tone of a message, the outcome of a first date, you are handing over the controls of your inner world to a chaotic and unpredictable universe. It's a recipe for constant anxiety and disappointment. But when your contentment is rooted in your own virtuous character, these external events simply lose their power to devastate you. A disappointing date becomes just that, a single evening that didn't lead to a connection, not a verdict on your worthiness. A breakup, while still painful, is felt as a clean grief for the loss of a shared future, not as a catastrophic collapse of your entire identity. You can feel the sadness without being annihilated by it, because your core sense of who you are and what you value remains untouched, like a deep anchor holding fast while the waves crash on the surface. You no longer ricochet between the highs of acceptance and the lows of rejection, because your primary source of validation is an internal compass that always points toward your own unwavering self-respect. To cultivate this state, begin by actively practicing being alone without feeling lonely. So many people jump from relationship to relationship or fill every quiet moment with social plans because they are afraid of the silence, afraid of what they might find when it's just themselves in the room. Make a conscious effort to schedule time with yourself and treat it with the same importance as a date with someone else. Use this time to engage in activities that reinforce your competence and independence. Cook yourself a wonderful meal, work on a personal project, read a book that expands your mind, or simply sit in quiet reflection. The goal is to build a rich, fulfilling life that you genuinely enjoy on your own terms. When you do this, you are sending a powerful message to your own psyche: I am enough. This self-contained fulfillment makes you a chooser in the dating world, not a beggar. You are not looking for someone to rescue you from an empty life. You are looking for a wonderful companion to enhance a life that is already full and meaningful. This self-sufficient contentment also transforms the way you navigate the inevitable rough patches within a relationship. When you are not dependent on your partner for your happiness, you can approach conflicts from a place of problem solving rather than panic. A disagreement is no longer a terrifying threat to your entire emotional ecosystem. It is a specific issue to be worked through collaboratively. You can advocate for your needs calmly and clearly, without the desperate edge of someone who fears that not getting their way will shatter their world. This emotional stability creates a safe harbor for your partner as well, allowing them the space to be imperfect, to have bad days, and to work through their own struggles without feeling responsible for your emotional state. Your relationship becomes a partnership of two whole people, a dynamic and resilient alliance rather than a fragile codependency. This is the ultimate gift of Stoic contentment. It doesn't just protect you from the storms of romance. It allows you to build a kind of love that is so secure and so deeply rooted in mutual respect that it can withstand any weather, growing stronger and more beautiful with every season it endures. Having a clear sense of your own virtues and a resilient inner contentment provides a wonderful foundation, but sometimes in the heat of a difficult moment, we need something more concrete than a principle. We need an example to embody. This brings us to a profoundly practical and inspiring step: using role models for guidance. Throughout history and even in our modern world, there are individuals who seem to exemplify the qualities we aspire to: grace under pressure, unwavering integrity, profound compassion, and unshakable courage. The Stoics were fervent believers in the power of emulating such figures. They understood that when we are faced with a complex emotional challenge, especially in the tangled web of romance, our own judgment can be clouded by hurt, fear, or desire. In those moments, asking a simple question like, "What would Marcus Aurelius do?" or "How would my most virtuous self respond?" is not about escaping your own identity. It's about plugging into a source of wisdom greater than your temporary feelings, using a mental model to guide your actions back toward your highest principles. Think of this practice as having a personal advisory board for your character, with a seat reserved for a Stoic sage. When you're blindsided by jealousy or simmering with resentment, your default, untrained mind might urge you to launch an accusation, retreat into a sulking silence, or post a vague, attention-seeking message on social media. These are reactive impulses driven by the rawest parts of our psychology. But when you have a figure like Marcus Aurelius on your mental council, you can pause and invoke his example. Here was a man who commanded the entire Roman Empire, facing constant political intrigue, betrayals, and the burdens of immense power. In his private journal, Meditations, which was essentially his own Stoic exercise book, he consistently reminded himself to act with justice, to accept the actions of others peacefully, and to focus only on his own duty. So, in your moment of romantic turmoil, instead of reacting, you can literally ask, "What would Marcus do?" The answer that arises won't be a specific script, but a guiding orientation. It would likely be, he would not be controlled by this passion. He would examine his own judgments. He would communicate with calm reason, not emotional accusation. He would focus on what is just and kind, not on what feels satisfying in the moment. This mental pivot can be the difference between a relationship-damaging explosion and a conversation that, while difficult, is rooted in mutual respect. You need not limit yourself to ancient Roman emperors. Your role model could be a modern figure known for their equanimity and strength, a cherished mentor from your own life, or even a composite ideal you've constructed from the best traits of many people. The key is to select a figure whose character you genuinely admire for its virtue, not just for their success or charm. Perhaps you choose Nelson Mandela for his profound capacity for forgiveness and his unwavering commitment to a higher purpose, even after decades of unjust imprisonment. In a romantic context, when you are struggling to forgive a partner for a past hurt, asking what would Mandela do can help you access a perspective of radical grace and long-term vision that your own hurt ego is blocking. Maybe your role model is a grandparent who always met life's difficulties with gentle humor and steadfast patience. When you're frustrated with your partner's habits, channeling that grandparent spirit can help you respond with a light touch rather than a sharp criticism. The figure itself is less important than the qualities they represent to you. They become a living, breathing symbol of the virtues you are trying to cultivate within yourself. To make this a tangible part of your daily life, you can begin by consciously selecting your Stoic guide. Take some time to reflect on which historical or modern figure most embodies the character you wish to have in a relationship. Read about them, learn how they handled adversity, and internalize their core philosophy. Then, make it a habit to invoke them before a challenging situation arises. For instance, if you know you have a difficult conversation planned for the evening, spend a few minutes in the afternoon reflecting on your role model's approach. Mentally rehearse how they would enter that room, the tone of voice they would use, the listening posture they would adopt. This pre-game ritual primes your brain to default to that higher standard. When the conversation actually begins and you feel the old reactive patterns starting to stir, the defensiveness, the urge to interrupt, that's the moment to consciously bring your guide into the room with you. It can be as simple as taking a silent breath and asking the question. This creates a powerful circuit breaker, inserting a space between the trigger and your response, and in that space you grant your better self a chance to take the lead. Now we arrive at a skill that can feel like emotional superpower in the heat of a relationship, the practice of maintaining equanimity in the face of both praise and blame. Imagine your sense of self as a deep, still lake. Praise from your partner is like a gentle, warm breeze that ripples the surface. Blame or criticism is a cold, sharp wind. The untrained self is like a shallow pond, completely churned up by every passing weather system. One moment you're euphoric because they called you brilliant, the next you're crushed because they said you were being inconsiderate. Your entire emotional state, your very sense of worth, becomes a ping-pong ball in a game you didn't agree to play, bouncing between the highs of their approval and the lows of their disapproval. This is the engine of neediness, and it makes you incredibly vulnerable to manipulation, whether intentional or not. Stoic equanimity is the practice of digging your pond so deep that no surface wind, no matter how warm or how cold, can disturb the tranquil waters at its core. Your worth is not a verdict they deliver, it is a truth you carry within you, based on the steady, unwavering knowledge of your own character. The first step in building this steadiness is to perform a simple but profound act of mental recategorization. You must learn to see both praise and blame for what they truly are, external events belonging to the same category as the weather. They are data points about the person giving them, not definitive facts about you. When your partner praises you, it is wonderful feedback. It feels good. You can receive it with a genuine, warm thank you. But you must internally recognize that this praise is their opinion, their judgment, their external perspective. It is not the source of your goodness. If you were a good person before the praise, you are still a good person after it. The praise didn't make it so, it merely acknowledged what was already true. The moment you internalize praise as the confirmation of your worth, you hand over the keys to your self-esteem. You become addicted to the next compliment, and you start shaping your behavior to solicit it, slowly eroding your authenticity. The same mental shift is even more critical when facing blame or criticism. When your partner expresses disappointment or frustration, it is also an external event. It is information about their experience, their feelings, their expectations. It is not in and of itself a truth about your moral failure. The untrained reaction is to either crumple inward, absorbing the blame as a confirmation of your own inadequacy, or to lash outward in a defensive counterattack. Both reactions come from the same fragile source, a self-worth that is dependent on external validation. The equanimous response is to receive the criticism with the same calm curiosity you might apply to a weather report. You listen to the data, you do not let it define you. You then take that data and subject it to your own internal court of reason. You ask yourself, is this feedback accurate? Is there a kernel of truth here from which I can learn and grow? Did my actions, even unintentionally, cause harm? If so, I can take responsibility and make amends, which is an expression of my virtue. Or you might determine, this criticism says more about their mood, their past hurts, or their unrealistic expectations. I can hear it, but I do not have to own it. Your self-worth remains anchored in your own honest self-assessment, not in their passing judgment. To see how this plays out in reality, let's walk through two parallel scenarios. First, the scenario of praise. Your partner comes home and gushes about a meal you cooked, saying, "You are the most amazing cook, this is perfect." The needy, externally driven response is to feel a surge of euphoria and think, yes, I am amazing, I am a perfect partner, your entire evening feels bright. But what happens tomorrow when you make a simple, average meal and there is no praise? The contrast feels like a withdrawal. You might feel a pang of disappointment or even ask, did you like the food? Seeking that same hit of validation. The equanimous response is to receive the praise warmly. You smile and say, thank you, I'm so glad you're enjoying it. Internally, you think, it's nice that they appreciated the effort I put into that meal. Your self-talk remains grounded. You know your worth as a partner is not contingent on your culinary skills being praised daily. You cooked a good meal, you are the same person whether they noticed it or not. This inner stability prevents you from becoming a performer constantly waiting for applause. Now, the more challenging scenario of blame. You forget an important date, an anniversary of when you first met. Your partner is hurt and says, you are so thoughtless and selfish, you never think about what's important to me. The reactive, fragile self either collapses, they're right, I am a terrible, selfish person, leading to shame and prostration, or attacks, well, you forgot my birthday last year, so who are you to talk? Leading to a destructive argument. The equanimous partner, while certainly feeling the discomfort of the situation, does not internalize the global label of thoughtless and selfish. They hear the data, my partner is hurt because I forgot a date that is meaningful to them. They feel genuine remorse for causing that hurt because causing unnecessary pain is not aligned with their virtue of kindness. They might respond by saying, I am so sorry I forgot our anniversary. I can see how much that hurt you, and that was not my intention. My forgetfulness was a mistake, and I will make sure it doesn't happen again. Do you see the profound difference? You are taking responsibility for the specific action of forgetting, which is within your control to improve, without accepting the sweeping character judgment of being a fundamentally thoughtless person. You are addressing the real issue, their hurt, without letting their angry interpretation dismantle your core sense of self. This calm, accountable, but non-reactive stance is incredibly powerful. It de-escalates conflict, it models mature emotional regulation, and it ensures that you are guided by your own moral compass, not yanked around by someone else's opinion, no matter how loudly they state it. This powerful reminder of life's fleeting nature brings a profound sense of clarity to our romantic relationships, cutting through the noise of daily grievances and redirecting our focus to what is genuinely significant. It's one thing to understand the concept of memento mori intellectually, but another to feel its urgent truth in your bones, to let it reorder your priorities from the ground up. In the vast cosmic timeline, the span of a human life is but a brief, flickering candle flame. The average lifespan amounts to only about 4,000 weeks, a startlingly small number when you consider how many of those weeks we willingly sacrifice to resentment, to waiting for apologies that may never come, or to trying to sculpt our partner into an impossible ideal. When you internalize this perspective, the landscape of your relationship shifts dramatically. The minor annoyances, the socks left on the floor, the different way of loading the dishwasher, the forgotten errand, begin to look like what they truly are, inconsequential specks of dust on the grand canvas of your shared, limited time. They are not the point of the painting, they are barely even visible in the final masterpiece. This realization elevates what truly matters from a nice idea to a non-negotiable guiding principle. What are the elements that will actually matter when you look back on your life together from its final chapter? It will not be the pristine cleanliness of your home or the flawless execution of every plan. It will be the depth of your connection, those quiet moments of true understanding where you felt completely seen and accepted by another human being. It will be the shared growth, the memory of how you supported each other through losses, celebrated each other's triumphs, and became better, wiser people because of the journey you took together. And above all, it will be the accumulated weight of 1,000 small acts of kindness, the cup of tea brought when you were stressed, the hand held during a moment of fear, the forgiveness offered after a thoughtless word. These are the real currencies of a love that lasts, the treasures you will carry with you. The shortness of life demands that we stop postponing this kind of love. We cannot afford to wait for a less stressful time, for when we're less busy, or for when our partner finally becomes perfect, to start prioritizing this deep, authentic connection. The time for that connection is always now, in this very conversation, in this very moment of choice. With this perspective, we can perform a simple but transformative audit on our conflicts. The next time you feel the familiar heat of irritation or the cold weight of jealousy beginning to descend, pause and apply the lifespan filter. Ask yourself, in the final accounting of my life, will this disagreement matter? Will I lie on my deathbed and wish I had won this argument, or will I wish I had simply embraced the imperfect, beautiful person in front of me? This filter has a remarkable way of draining the urgency from our most common relationship toxins. Jealousy, for instance, is often a fear-based attempt to control another person's attention, a massive investment of emotional energy in trying to command the wind and the tides. But when viewed through the lens of life's brevity, that energy is revealed as precious life force literally being wasted. The time spent stalking social media profiles or interrogating your partner about their interactions is time you are actively stealing from your own life, time that could have been filled with laughter, with creating a new memory, or with simply sitting in comfortable silence together. Letting go of jealousy isn't about being naive. It's about being fiercely protective of your most finite resource, your time, and refusing to squander it on fears about a future you cannot control. This same principle completely reframes our often futile pursuit of perfection in a partner. We so often enter relationships with a hidden blueprint, a checklist of qualities we want our partner to embody. When they inevitably fail to match this blueprint, when they are too messy, too anxious, too loud, or too quiet, we see it as a problem to be solved. We engage in a subtle, persistent project of renovation, offering helpful criticisms and nurturing a quiet hope for change. But the shortness of life exposes the profound arrogance and wastefulness of this endeavor. You are attempting to use the brief, one-of-a-kind life of another human being as raw material for your personal sculpture. You are asking them to spend their 4,000 weeks pretending to be someone they are not for your comfort. Instead, what if you saw their so-called flaws not as defects, but as the unique contours of their soul, the very features that make them who they are? What if you spent that energy you are using for renovation on a project of deep appreciation instead? To love someone is not to find a perfect person, but to see an imperfect person perfectly, to embrace the whole messy, glorious package of them, and to recognize that your limited, overlapping time on this earth is a gift that is made infinitely richer by their authentic, unedited presence. The greatest act of love in the face of mortality is to say, I will not waste a single day of our time together trying to change you. I will love you as you are right now, and I will cherish every moment we are given. And so we reach the final, culminating step of our journey, a concept that brings together all that we have learned into a single, powerful image, the inner citadel. Picture a magnificent ancient fortress built high upon a mountain with walls of immense granite and gates of solid iron. The weather rages outside, storms of heartbreak, winds of jealousy, the siege engines of betrayal and disappointment. But inside the fortress, in its central courtyard, there is a profound and unshakable calm. This fortress is not a physical place. It is your mind, your character, your soul, built and fortified by the 24 steps we have walked together. The Stoics called this the inner citadel, and it represents that sacred, inviolable core of your being, governed by reason and virtue, where no external romantic event, no rejection, no argument, no loss can ever truly breach the walls and destroy who you are. Your worth, your peace, and your purpose are housed safely within, making you the sovereign of your own emotional kingdom, regardless of the battles being waged outside the gates. This is not about becoming emotionally numb or building walls so high that love cannot get in. That would be a prison, not a citadel. The true inner citadel has a drawbridge. It allows love to flow in and out freely. It allows you to feel the full, vibrant spectrum of human emotion, the joy of connection, the pain of loss, the warmth of intimacy. The crucial difference is that when you live from your citadel, these emotions are visitors you welcome and observe, not tyrants that overthrow your government. You can feel the sharp sting of a breakup, but from within your stronghold, you recognize this pain as a natural human experience. You can observe the feeling, you can learn from it, and you can feel it begin to transform without it ever convincing you that your entire world has ended. The pain is real, but it cannot dismantle the foundations of your character, which are built on something far more solid and permanent than the fleeting state of any single relationship. Your capacity to love is not housed in the external relationship. It is a permanent, radiant feature of the citadel itself, a light that you carry within you, ready to be shone on the world, with or without a specific person to reflect it back. So, how do we actively build and, more importantly, continually fortify this inner stronghold? The blueprint is found in the daily, committed practice of every single step that has brought us here. Your morning meditation on Memento Mori is like sending a scout to the highest tower, granting you the clarity to see petty irritations for the temporary distractions they are. The nightly journal where you dissect your judgments is the work of the Citadel's engineers, constantly inspecting the walls for cracks and reinforcing them with self-awareness. The discipline of desire, where you shift your goal from obtaining a specific person to acting with virtue, is the act of moving your treasure from the vulnerable outer Bailey deep into the impregnable keep. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you choose courage over comfort, every time you practice negative visualization or view a situation from above, you are laying another granite block, strengthening another wall, and deepening the well of peace at the very center of your being. Think of fortification not as a massive, one-time project, but as the small, consistent habits of maintenance that prevent decay. Each day presents you with a new training exercise. When you feel the urge to check your phone obsessively for a message, and you instead choose to redirect your focus to a task you enjoy, you are reinforcing the gate against the siege of anxiety. When your partner says something that triggers a defensive reaction, and you consciously insert that sacred pause, You are manning the battlements with your rational mind, refusing to let the invaders of raw emotion storm the walls. When you practice voluntary discomfort by spending an evening contentedly alone, you are proving to yourself that your citadel is fully self-sufficient, with its own sources of water, food, and light. These are not abstract exercises, they are the practical moment-to-masonry work of building a soul that cannot be conquered by circumstance. The ultimate test of your inner citadel and its greatest reward comes when you face one of romance's most profound losses. When a long-term relationship ends or a deep love is not reciprocated, the storm outside is at its most violent. The untrained self, living in a hut of straw and wishful thinking, is utterly demolished. They identify so completely with the relationship that its end feels like a personal annihilation. But you, having fortified your citadel, experience the same event from an entirely different vantage point. You stand on your walls and you watch the storm rage. You feel the cold wind and the lashing rain, the grief, the loneliness, the confusion are all very real. But you are not the storm, you are the enduring structure observing the weather. You can feel the depth of your sorrow without becoming the sorrow itself. You can acknowledge the pain while simultaneously knowing with unshakable certainty that the core of who you are, your capacity for reason, your commitment to virtue, your ability to love and to grow remains not just intact but tested and proven. The relationship was a beautiful garden you tended outside the citadel walls. The storm has damaged the garden, but the citadel stands. And because it stands, you have a safe place from which to heal, to learn, and when the time is right, to begin the work of planting anew. This is the final gift of the 25 steps, not a guarantee of perpetual happiness or a life free from pain, but the far more valuable assurance of unwavering resilience. You are building a home for yourself that no one can ever take from you. A love that begins from this place of inner strength is the most powerful and sustainable love there is. It is a love of choice, not of desperate need. It is a love that empowers both you and your partner because you are not looking to them to build your home for you. You are inviting them to visit the magnificent, well-fortified home you have already built for yourself. The journey to emotional mastery in romance is therefore the most profound act of self-love and the most solid foundation upon which to build a love that can truly last a lifetime. And so we stand here at the end of this path, 25 steps laid out before us, not as a rigid staircase to be climbed once and forgotten, but as a beautiful, winding trail we are invited to walk for the rest of our lives. This journey through Stoic wisdom has been about one fundamental transformation, shifting from being a passenger tossed in the stormy seas of romantic emotion to becoming the skilled captain of your own ship. We began by learning to distinguish what is ours to command from what is not, laying the very bedrock of our peace. We practiced preparing our minds for adversity and learned to separate raw impressions from the stories that so often torment us. We've explored the courage to love our fate, to see obstacles as opportunities, and to find profound contentment from within. We've built the daily habits of journaling, of viewing our lives from a cosmic perspective, and of fortifying that unshakable inner citadel. This entire journey converges on a single, liberating truth. Emotional mastery in romance is not about achieving a permanent state of bliss or becoming immune to feeling. It is about building a resilient inner stability that allows you to feel everything: the joy, the passion, the hurt, the fear, without being controlled by any of it. It is the continuous, loving practice of returning to your virtues, your reason, and your own sovereign self again and again, no matter what the world of love brings to your door. Remember, this is a practice, not a destination. There will be days when the principles feel as natural as breathing, when you navigate a disagreement with grace and feel a deep, unwavering gratitude for your partner. And there will be other days, and this is crucial to accept, when you will forget it all. You will snap in irritation, you will feel the cold grip of jealousy, you will find yourself anxiously waiting for a text. This is not failure, this is the human part of the practice. The mastery is not in never falling, but in the speed and compassion with which you return to your center. Each moment of forgetfulness is simply another invitation to remember, another opportunity to dust yourself off, consult your virtues, and choose again. The Stoic path is one of gentle, persistent return. It is about weaving these principles into the very fabric of your daily life until they become your default setting, your automatic response to the world. This is a lifelong apprenticeship in the art of living and loving well, and every single day offers you a new lesson. Now, the wisdom you've gathered here is not meant to remain as words on a screen. It is meant to be lived. Knowledge without action is like a seed left in the packet. It has potential, but it cannot grow. Your journey toward a calmer, stronger, and more fulfilling romantic life begins with a single, deliberate step. I want you to pause this video for a moment, and I want you to make a choice. Look back over these 25 steps and choose just one that resonates with you right now in your current circumstance. It doesn't have to be the most complex one. Maybe it's the simple practice of asking, "Is this within my control?" the next time you feel a surge of anxiety. Maybe it's committing to the nightly journal for just 1 week to start uncovering your hidden judgments. Perhaps it's the courageous decision to have one vulnerable conversation you've been avoiding, or the gentle practice of memento mori, reminding yourself to cherish your partner today as if it could be your last. Choose one, and for the next 7 days, commit to it with your whole heart. Apply it, observe what happens, and see how this single, focused practice begins to subtly reshape your emotional landscape. This is not a journey you have to walk alone. We are all learning, stumbling, and growing together in this complex dance of love and life. I want to extend a heartfelt invitation to you to become part of a living community of practice right here. In the comments below, share which one step you have chosen to implement. Tell us why it called to you. Share your struggles, your small victories, your questions, and your insights. How has Stoic thinking already influenced your approach to love? What challenges are you facing? Your story is a vital piece of this collective wisdom. By sharing our experiences, we lift each other up. We offer perspectives, we find encouragement, and we remind one another that we are not alone in our quest for a more peaceful and powerful heart. The path to emotional mastery is a path we walk together, supporting each other with every step. So make your choice, take that first step today, and let us know you're here. Your journey begins now.